Sonic Blast Special. Sadly, just like Sonic Live, this was yet another story that was never uploaded to YouTube at all, which means actually getting the footage for this review was a tedious process of constantly using the snipping tool. And I almost thought I couldn't find it, because I had to click the title in full at the very bottom of the page first. What a terrible web interface. Anyways, for some reason the story starts out with a wall of text telling you the prologue about how the Flicky Island has a portal to the Flicky Zone with hidden treasure in it, and natural resources that Eggman wants. Why is Flicky Island not the location of the 3D Blast adaptation instead? This is already pretty original, so it's a shame this is all explained to you in the most uninteresting way imaginable. The problem is, you learn about this anyways, so what's the point of the wall of text? And that's not the only time this kind of wall of text has showed up either, like issue 42 had that as well. Although, the wall of text at the start of a story thing isn't really that big of a deal since you can just skip over it. It's really up to you if you want to read it or not, since they're going to tell you anyways in the actual story. Eggman tells Snively to engage the super secret scrambler to prevent his communication to him from being intercepted. And Snively smashes the thing out of revenge for how after Sonic's quest, he had been stuck on Eggman's back for days as a punishment. He thinks about how now Eggman will end up all alone and far away with no Squawk Box to protect him, and with the Scrambler gone, his call will be heard by his enemies. This indeed happens, and Rotor tells Sally and Tails to go to the harbor where Sonic is because Robotnik is in the South Mobe Ocean. Mobe Ocean? What kind of a name is that? And again, that kind of name would only be given to a Mobian place by people who arrived on it from another planet. What the native Mobians just call it an ocean? And I don't think that's the in-universe explanation, so it's just a stupid name. Anyways, Tails says to Rotor to launch his Bathysphere submarine once again, and he'll meet him in the Sea Fox. I failed to mention earlier, but it sure is nice that he's still being allowed to use the Sea Fox even after he used it to go on an adventure all by himself. It really does well to symbolize how his friends trust him a lot more now, and how he didn't get in trouble with them for running away. It shows, like, they're good friends, because instead of yelling at him for running away, they recognize that they basically earned respect for him. Wish we had actually seen that, though. Sonic is glum because he's been thinking about Knuckles and how Sally hasn't told him she had been friends with him for years. Sadly, this is completely dropped. Why would she ever think that she had to keep her friendship with Knuckles a secret to protect the planet? Sally tries to distract Sonic, but before anything can happen, she gets interrupted by Rotor and Tails showing up. Okay, why didn't they all show up together? You expect me to believe that Sally is faster than 2 submarines? Why did she arrive here first? Anyway, Sonic, Rotor, and Tails all go to Flicky Island where Eggman is, and already we have an interesting concept I like. On this island, the flora and fauna bloom with not flowers, but gemstones. This is a magical world after all. I like how Eggman says that money has no meaning to him. It's good that the writer thought to make him say this since it's true. A dictator who can get anything he wants and who already owns the world wouldn't have need of any more money than he already has. Eggman comes to the conclusion, while saying the made-up sounding phrase, gemological potential, that because there's so many gems here, there must be a Chaos Emerald. It would have made more sense for him to come to that conclusion on the basis that all these gemstones being here blooming instead of flowers is caused by magic overflow, and so that magic must come from an emerald. It's actually explained why Eggman came here alone, and it's because the inhabitants of the island are just little birds who would be very easy to enslave. Again, this is the Sonic Blast special, right? I'm looking at the top left corner of the website page and it clearly says Sonic Blast. Is this like a creative combination of the 2 games? So maybe there isn't going to be a Sonic Blast adaptation. And it's a shame because it did have a pretty interesting story, like the Chaos Emerald got split into pieces and that's what you find in the special stages. Although Chaos Emerald split into pieces is something that was already seen in the Triple Trouble adaptation, so. But the Flickies also managed to eat the jewels. Again, they're magical. Also, it's explained why the Flickies are immediately running from Eggman and thus making it impossible for him to grab them, despite having black and red eyes. It's because they have no natural predators, so they don't fear strangers, much like the dodo. Already this is looking like it's written with much more care than the actual game, actually providing explanations for a lot of things. Of course, Eggman gets to roboticizing. It then has the albeit clever idea of leaving one alone and letting it flee so that it can unintentionally lead him to a Chaos Emerald, which it would have been heading towards for stopping him or something. Meanwhile, Tails gets knocked out of the sky, but not injured somehow, by a swarm of robotic flickies. And somehow, for some reason, when the robots came in contact with the salt water, they reverted to their normal forms. This is supposed to be the convoluted, ridiculous explanation for why the flickies can be de-roboticized so easily. Because simply having Eggman put them inside of Badniks and having them pop out of them would have been way too simple. The insulting thing is that Sonic then talks as if this happens all the time. Oh, this is another really creative usage of Sonic's super speed. He gathers a handful of seawater, and faster than the physics of displacement can happen, he forces it into a ball and throws it at the robot Flicky. It's actually pretty clever. So what now? Does that mean Sonic's gonna storm the island with water guns? That'll be a pretty interesting change of pace, actually, and that's to make me forgive how arbitrary the solution is. Sonic spin dashes on the water at Sonic speed to get to the island, not that different from his running on water in Hydrocity Zone really, leaving his friends to deal with the Flickies by, you guessed it, water guns. Sure, it's convenient that they had actually thought to bring water guns of all things here, and that literally all of the Flickies are just staying to attack Tails and Rotor who have water guns, instead of some of them separating from the group and running after Sonic when he doesn't have a water gun. Sonic takes a panel to admire the pretty look of the island, which is nice for making him more sympathetic since he can admire beauty. And then communicating with a bird through drawing a picture of Eggman in the sand with a stick causes the bird to lead him over Eggman's boot prints in the sand. Eggman, on the other hand, finds a giant magical ring serving as a dimensional portal, just like it was stated in the opening cutscene to 3D Blast, but was never actually used in the game because you just use those giant rings to travel to different zones. Eggman comes to the logical conclusion that the Flicky dimension must be powered by a Chaos Emerald, and Sonic attacks him just before he can get into it. Of course, Eggman's just as crazy prepared as Rotor was with his water gun, as he conveniently brought a gauntlet-mounted particle beam with him against Sonic. Fortunately, what looks like the sight of Sonic being covered in a pink bubble bath that I only knew was supposed to mean he was vaporized from Eggman's text bubble, is actually revealed to be the image of Sonic moving away at double light speed. I'm just gonna give the story and the comic the benefit of the doubt and assume that whenever Sonic says he's moving faster than sound when he's not supersonic, and when the plot doesn't demand that he's right about that he's just exaggerating about his speed for the sake of his ego. Besides, how could he possibly know exactly how fast he is? He also gives Eggman an atomic wedgie. Sonic, giving someone a wedgie. You know, when I compared his old treatment of Antoine to the actions of an elementary school bully, I didn't think I would be proven right. This just goes to show you that Sonic is just Scourge if he had proper victims to take his stress out on. Here, he has Eggman to bully, but since Eggman is a terrible person and a much bigger bully than he is, Sonic ends up being the good guy of the situation. But if it was Scourge, he wouldn't have had an Eggman to do this to in the first place. This isn't an insult against Sonic, just a fascinating observation about what an anti-hero he really is. Mario would certainly never do this. Then something really weird happens as Sonic gets electrocuted just from touching Eggman's nose. I guess Eggman's nose was cybernetic too. He explains that the neural disruption field is tuned to his physiology but shocking to Sonic's. While Sonic is too disoriented to stop him, Eggman jumps into the giant ring, but conveniently, Sonic snaps out of it instantly and is immediately able to jump into the psychedelic dimension. What was the point then? Well, Eggman was able to jump into it, but Sonic was able to jump into it with him. So that must have not been a very good shock then. Why did he even bother with... I don't know. After a huge panel showing off Sonic fighting a bunch of bosses from 3D Blast, which Eggman somehow had with him despite not going to the island with much, or maybe Sonic just stood by and politely waited for Eggman to build every boss by hand for the sake of having a fun challenge to fight. Sonic then gets grabbed by Eggman's cape, because it turns out it was controlled by Eggman with electromagnetics that were woven into the fabric. Oh, so there's actually a practical reason for Eggman wearing a cape that could get caught in something that justifies him wearing it. This is pretty awesome. He also explains that his cape is made from the strongest fiber in the world, that Sonic falls over tied up in it. Unfortunately, this just further raises the question of why he doesn't think it's too dangerous to wear them. Because at least a cape that can rip apart won't kill him if it gets stuck in the blade of a spinning propeller. His cape might get caught on some thorns or something, and then what would he do? Abandon it? Abandon a cape that valuable? Really, capes are just a hazard. While Sonic is all tied up and yet a Flicky is there, making me wonder if it's somehow going to help with no opposable thumbs, Eggman makes a witty and amusing remark at how Chaos Emerald was wasted as a sculpture decoration. And I suppose he has cybernetics that give him super strength, because that's the only explanation I can come up with for why he was able to climb all the way up there, despite being huge and out of shape. And after an incredibly dickish line, the giant statue reveals it was a sleeping, giant, magical bird made of stone, and promptly makes him pay for his religiously intolerant sentence by angrily chasing him down. Why was it sleeping sitting up in the first place? Wouldn't that be less comfortable? Maybe it's so heavy that it wouldn't be able to get back up if it laid down. But it's already a magical giant bird made of stone, who I presume is this way because he's the king of the Flickies, and stone would make it less vulnerable to being attacked. So it being able to lie down for a nap just fine shouldn't be out of the question, with all this ridiculous going on. And I'm assuming it can't possibly spend all day doing nothing but sitting there sleeping waiting for someone to steal its emerald, could it? Also, its roaring at Eggman causes a trans-dimensional reality quake, probably because it's so powerful and did it by accident. And Sonic notices this after having crawled all the way here still tied up. Gotta give the story some credit for not expecting me to believe he could be untied by a thumbless bird. Eggman realizes that the zone is collapsing upon itself, and even the magic ring is shrinking because of it. And Sonic figures out that if he vibrates at the maximum speed, the atoms in his spines will pass through the cape, freeing him and letting him run to safety. Another creative use of his powers, although sadly it's in a vague reference and confirmation of that one time he went invisible by doing exactly that. Now, I'm not a quantum physicist, so maybe I'm wrong, but I don't see how atoms vibrating fast enough would create the same effect as them being intangible and invisible. It wouldn't be so bad if Sonic just admitted that he's using magic, chaos energy, to do this. But instead they try to give a pseudo-science explanation. I'm guessing the only reason Sonic agrees to help pull Eggman out of the magic ring he's stuck in is because if he doesn't, he'll have to see the gruesome and gory image of Eggman having his right arm and leg taken away from him as they get left behind in the other dimension from the portal closing. Obviously Sonic wouldn't want to see that or have that on his conscience. And even if he did, Sally would nag him for it. Not like it would really matter. Eggman could just replace them with cybernetics anyways. Though those replacement limbs might be superpowered in some way, so that'd be a big problem. And before you think I'm reading too much into this by saying this, when Eggman tries to reach back into the portal to get the Chaos Emerald, Sonic literally says, "Will you get over it before you lose your arm?" So it's canon. That's what could have happened. Eggman loses the gem because the Flicky that was conveniently right in front of him at the time bit him. And Rotor and Tails come in saying they restored all the Flickies to normal and destroyed the roboticizer. Eggman then points out that he can't get home because Sonic had destroyed the exoskeletal battlesuit that flew him here, meaning that this island is now his prison. This better stick! For more than just one issue! Seriously, I'm sick of Eggman by this point. Also, did he build a second battlesuit after Sonic's quest that I wasn't aware of? I didn't see him fly here in one. And maybe I just wasn't paying attention. The backup story is Sonic and Sally hosting an awards show as a sign of appreciation for all of their friends, and themselves, as Sonic gives himself an award. Normally I'd dismiss this as worthless filler, but it actually made me chuckle at one point. It was actually pretty charming, because first they make fun of themselves by having Sonic point out how stupid the pun-filled dialogue of the very early comic was, by saying Rotor had written corny jokes for them. And Rotor had to apologize because he couldn't think of anything funny. And then, the thing that made me chuckle, was Sonic saying, "You call that strong, Rotor? She's opening a jar of grape jam!" And Rotor saying, "That was the best I could do, Sonic. Besides, it's hard to open a stuck jar." I like this. How Rotor's camera footage of all the freedom fighters for demonstrating how they earned their awards just happens to disprove everything. with Tails being afraid of a mosquito as he tries to swat it. Antoine proving that he is indeed disloyal by having eaten all the donuts, saying he won't tell who was out of loyalty for the culprit, and then burping, "I told you he wasn't loyal." And at the end, Sally proves she actually is supposedly the smartest by pulling the plug on the awards show before she could be humiliated too. I could actually get the logic behind all of those camera footages being used too. Opening a suck jar is a sign of strength. Tails is fighting through the fear of being stung by a mosquito and thus showing courage, and thus bravery, and Antoine is talking like he won't get the person who ate the donuts in trouble, and Rotor was too ditzy to realize the burp meant he was the one who did it and thought it was just a coincidence. So it's not even like I can say the story was ruined by meta logic because it made no sense he'd use that footage. It genuinely makes sense that this would happen. But let's go back to that to end this off. How is Sally the smartest? It was actually Rotor who was the winner, being the genius. And Sonic fortunately says exactly what I'm thinking. What makes you think you're the smartest freedom fighter, Sal? Which is gutsy of him to say. I guess the point is she's the one with the most common sense. The smartest in the level-headed, street-smart, realist sense. Because Rotor's a genius, and he still didn't think to just cancel using that footage entirely for not being good enough. Oh, and another story. Bugged Bunny. Oh, I just got that. It's like Bugs Bunny. Eggman and Snively are wearing green disguises so they could sneak up on Bunny and plant a tracking device on her while she was asleep. So the thing that Rotor was worried about happening the day he met her is now actually happening for real. However, Snively and Eggman aren't able to follow her because while she can use her robotic limbs to get around the obstacles in a way beautifully, Eggman and Snively can't. Okay, but it's a tracking device. Why do they have to personally follow her as she's walking? Why can't they just wait for her to come home and fly to Nuthole with a battleship? The obvious answer is Rotor would have found the tracking device on inspection since he's crazy prepared by then, but that was never already said, so it's a plot hole. Eggman does get the idea to return to Robotropolis already to do just that though, but before he can, it's revealed that the tracking device fell off of Bunny and was eaten by a mole. Yeah, I'm not sure why, since the mole really shouldn't think that it's food, doesn't look anything like food. And Bunny mistakes it for one of her own circuits, complaining that now she'll never get it back. You know, because her own circuits falling off is such a common occurrence that it would totally make sense for her to just assume that her circuits fell off, and only find mild annoyance as a reaction to it, instead of going, "Oh crap, my robot legs are falling apart!" Oh, is this the reason that we were supposed to believe that the tracking device wouldn't be found by Rotor? He'd mistake it for a circuit of hers? Or just blend right into her legs? Anyways, the story ends with Eggman and Snively digging for hours trying to look for the tracking device, purely because of Eggman being stubborn and spiteful, when it would have been easier for him to just build a new one. And I have to wonder though, as much as I love this plot, if Eggman could just build a tracking device to find Nuthole and stick it on a freedom fighter, why hasn't he done that and found it a long time ago? Even if he fails, he could just keep trying. This issue, along with the main story written by Mike Gallagher and the rest by Angelo, was a really pleasant surprise. Even the throwaway backup story with the award ceremony was good. I was really confused that despite the story being called Sonic Blast, the story was an adaptation of 3D Blast, which is a completely different game. Talk about didn't do the research. But I wasn't disappointed. It was a pretty creative take on it. It explained a few things and actually used the giant ring as a portal to the Flicky dimension when I was only given a passing mention in the cutscene in the actual game. I guess the only problems I can find with the story, aside from Rotor and Tails just happening to have water guns, when those water guns wouldn't be able to hurt anything, so why would they even have them in the submarine in the first place, is that a lot of weird stuff happens in the story, like Eggman's nose being electrified, but which I suppose someone could accuse of being just silly writing. But the thing is that this takes place in a fantasy universe, so all of this is easily explainable as just being magic. These things seem to come out of nowhere, like Eggman's cape being something he can control and that can't be destroyed, but they still make sense to be there when you think about it. The Flickies being de-roboticized by water, though, was an extremely convenient Deus Ex Machina, and Sonic even tries to pretend this happens all the time. And the whole problem is it's never happened before. And it would have been much simpler to just have Eggman have stuffed him in badniks and they just pop out when the badniks are destroyed. They didn't have to do this. But on the bright side, it was a pretty interesting change of pace, having water guns being vital for a change, and letting Rotor and Tails be useful by using them. And the other biggest problem, another Deus Ex Machina, is how Sonic got out of the cape. They don't even try to imply that Sonic has come to the wrong conclusion about how it happened and fails to understand that it's magic, that he's just using another one of his chaos powers to turn intangible again. Magic would have made more sense than pseudoscience. I think I would have actually preferred the Flicky magically getting him out of it. Flickies are stated to be magical after all, so this would have been the perfect time to see this, although it would make me wonder how they didn't use their magic to keep themselves from getting roboticized if that had happened. One of the biggest plot holes in the original game. But overall, I loved the creative way that the game's plot was adapted, and how it started out with Snively getting his revenge, so there's consequences how he was treated in an earlier issue. The award story seems like one of those really pointless backup stories from the very beginning of the comic, but promptly shows itself to be much better written than that, and thus showing how far the series has come since then, by starting out making fun of the corny dialogue of that era, and then proving itself to be genuinely charming and funny while also making sense. And the funny story was great too, an interesting concept, although again, if Eggman could just attach tracking devices to the freedom fighters in their sleep, why hasn't he done that a lot more and found Knothole already? All around though, this was a great issue. Next up is issue 46.